So that's just the overheads on their own, and that's with the bass drum and the snare drum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by phase aligning them. I already calculated yesterday what the figures were, but I'm going to do it all again just for the sake of the video. So there's two ways you can do this. You could either run something like the Waves InPhase plugin over the overheads, or you could run Waves InPhase over each of these as a mono plugin, which is what I'm going to do. But then once I've got that figure, whatever the calculated figure is of the number of milliseconds I need to move it by, I'm actually going to turn it off and just manually put it in up here, because you can delay a track in milliseconds directly in Cubase, and it's actually a hell of a lot better in terms of like CPU usage. But I like the way the Waves InPhase plugin works as a visual to work out what the value is. So I'm going to start by putting the InPhase plugin on it, and let's open two instances of it because I've got overhead left and overhead right. And on both of these, because I've got the channels linked, the tracks linked, it puts the same plugins on both of them. So as you can see, it also, they both get affected the same. So yeah, that'll be interesting, see how all that works. So I've clicked the button up here where it's side chains, so I can now go to the snare drum channel. That's the bass drum channel, the snare drum top there, and I can send the snare drum to both of these plugins. So you see where it says down here SC, that the snare drum is going to be coming out of the snare drum channel into this side chain here, and then this one up here, which is labeled alpha, that is your overhead, whether it be the left or the right overhead. So I'm going to hit play on this and then press this button here, which actually captures some of the sound. There we go. And now I can go along here and I can see this yellow one on the bottom is the actual snare drum signal. And you can see how far out the overheads are from the snare drum signal. So if I try and get this as close as possible on the line at the point where the snare drum starts, which is there, and then I bring back, using this dial here, bring back the overhead, so I try and get that in line as well, and you can now see that that overhead there, the left overhead, is perfectly in line with the snare drum. I'm now going to do the same on the right, although because they're linked, this will change the value. At the moment it's minus 3.81. Let's see if the right overhead is the same. And it looks like it might be 3.83. Yeah, it's kind of 2 milliseconds different, which is actually what I calculated yesterday. So I'm not going to leave these plugins on. I'm just going to go to the channel here, go to the top and say minus 3.81. And I'm going to go to the right channel here and go minus 3.83. So that's the number of milliseconds back, and then I can get rid of that plugin. And those overheads should now be bang in time phase-wise with the bass drum and the snare drum. So what I'm going to do to show you that better is I'm going to duplicate those two tracks, so we got a copy of them, and I'm going to, in the copies, reset them back to 0 so we don't have any of that, and they're all linked, aren't they? Give me a second, I need to unlink them and relink them in two different pairs. So unlink these channels, and then I want to link those two. And I want to link these two. Lovely, right. So now I can choose which ones I want. So if I listen with the bass drum, snare drum. So these are in time, totally in phase. Now I'll go back, and these are totally not in phase. See how much thinner the snare drum is and how inconsistent it is compared to it's subtle, but it really makes a difference in the big scheme of things. I think it really makes that is fabulously useful. Neil said 2 minutes ago. Yeah, do you see what I mean? So I'm going to do the same thing before I go on any further. I'm going to get rid of these extra overheads that I created for that demo. So I'm going to go to the room mic and do the same thing. So in phase. So I'm running the mono InPhase plugin. I'll put the side chain on, go to the snare drum top, add a send. Or the old sends got removed because I removed those plugins, which is nice. So I'm just going to play the room. Okay, so that's that, and then we've got the snare drum there and the room there. Now I'm expecting this to be much further out in time. And I know it is because I did it yesterday, and that's a really hard place to tell. I'll try and move along to this one instead. So you see where it goes down here? I'm guessing that's the beginning of it. So here-ish. So that's given me minus 6.91 milliseconds. Let's have a listen to... So that's in phase. And then I'll remove the plugin. Hang on. That's out of phase. In phase, which to me sounds good. I'm not so much worried about getting it perfect on the room because I might end up moving it so it's a little bit out of phase just to give it some depth. But for now, I'm going with the minus 6.91, which I'm going to go up to here and do minus 6.91. I mean, a 0.01 of a millisecond here or there. I don't think you're going to notice too much. So let's turn that off now. So now I've got room mics, and I've got the room, which I'm going to send to all drums. And I'll tell you where this becomes important, because, you know, when you listen to a drum mix and it's not all perfectly in phase and whatever, and you can hear the rooms and everything, it sounds lovely. You know, I'm not saying everything has to be bang aligned. In fact, there's a lot of room mics which are like 20, 30, 40 milliseconds after the drums. They sound like a delay, and they sound great. But if you really want to start saturating stuff, you want to put loads of distortion over stuff, all that bottom end that is going out of phase is just going to sound horrible. So I'd like to really trash that room mic up. I really want to just overdrive it and make it sound skanky, and it just wouldn't sound good if it wasn't in phase. I've either got to push it totally out of phase so it's not several milliseconds back so it's not interfering with the drum, so it's kind of like a delay, or just get it bang in. I don't like it when it's a tiny bit out because you just missing depth out the other drums then. You're just cancelling out the close drums. So anyway, that's my overheads, room, bass drum and snare drum top.